Recently, I was in Florida. It was crazy hot, 90 degrees there. Georgia, probably pretty warm down there, being mid-May when we're recording this. What's it like transitioning from cool spring temperatures into what's probably starting to be a warmer, muggier, early, late spring, technically, but probably feels like summer?
Muggy is definitely the word of the day. Yeah, it's actually cooled off a little bit, but yeah, it's been really warm, mid 80s, lots of rain. So it's just been pretty soggy. We had a dry spell for a couple weeks, but, yeah, it's just been really warm, really wet, making it easier to do some outside work. And then also in some ways, man, I just really need this to dry out so I can work these beds a little bit better. So I'm a little too wet, but yeah, lucky for sure. That's just Georgia. It'll be like midsummer will be 95, 96 degrees, 100, like it's not 100% humidity, but it feels like it's just, you like swim through the air all day long. It can get pretty muggy down here.
How's the learning curve of growing as you go through seasons? So you've worked at a farm, and I guess I don't know how much does that experience help? Since you're not necessarily crop planting or maybe making all the calls that, hey, do this, yet you observe it. What's been the difference between doing that at somebody else's farm and now you're totally in charge of getting the crop to harvest successfully with changing seasons? Because we're getting longer days, you're moving to warmer temperatures. How's that affected you at this stage of your farm experience?
Crop planting is definitely one of the bigger ones. Just trying to like time things better. Like, all right, we need to get this in the ground because it'll be ready at this date. We're more or less can hit our days to maturity, like whatever's on the seed packet or whatever it says on the website. But just knowing like, all right, we have this many weeks until this lettuce is going to try to go to seed. It's mostly with a lot of stuff. It's like with the very bold sensitive stuff. It's just like fighting against like getting it to a good enough size to harvest without it going to seed. And then also some like disease and pest pressure. Obviously I have experience with that, deal with it at the other farm, but it doesn't carry the same sort of weight. Like you go through, it's like, all right, we need to go through and basically more or less scalp the Swiss chard because it's just been hammered with pests. And I'll do it and it's, man, wow, a lot of pest damage, but it doesn't quite hit the same because you're just getting paid to do it and you don't really think twice about it as opposed to, man, look at all of this potential profit I could have had that looks like I got shot with a shotgun or Swiss cheese and I'm just having to pick it all out and then compost it. And so I would say that's the two big things. It's just been understanding like the pests and weed and disease cycles, and then just trying to find that rhythm of when do I need to start seed? When do I need to get stuff in the ground? When do I pick it? Those sort of things have definitely been the biggest thing. Cause essentially every week is like a new adventure. It's a little warmer, days are a little longer, or maybe there's been rain, maybe there hasn't been. So it's kind of every week is a new learning opportunity.
Are these definitely lessons you could take forward into future years of just knowing, all right, in May, it's going to start to look like this. I need to be on top of, say, watering earlier or that type of thing?
Oh yeah. Making sure that if there's any irrigation issues, make sure they're, solid, ready to go by middle of April, just in case you hit a dry spell. You really need to, for instance, I had carrots I've just still been harvesting. And the ground was just so hard because it got so dry. I almost physically couldn't harvest, even with a digging fork, couldn't harvest carrots. And we got 1.5 inch rain, and then all of a sudden it just popped right out. So if I would have just irrigated that bed, it would have saved me a lot of frustration. We might need to consider taking a break from outside lettuce for kind of this time of year, April, May, into June, when you have this combination of like warm temperatures, but also wet conditions. The lettuce does not seem to be super happy with that. I'm harvesting heads of little gem or romaine, and there's just rot carrying through into the middle. And some of that, it may just be like kind of rookie mistakes or just not knowing exactly if it's a disease issue, if it's just simply a moisture issue, but definitely going to be considering maybe in these like really warm, wet months, maybe we need to take a break salad or we just need to plan on having that in the tunnel for those couple of months until around June, July, it'll start to dry out a little bit. We'll be much more dependent on our irrigations. I think these are going to be some experiences that'll carry me through, and it'll help with crop planning and just the trajectory of the business as we reach this next year and then the year after and so on.
How much wiggle room does the business afford you now to take time to troubleshoot problems? Meaning you have so much to do. You're
Oh
just
my
trying to
gosh.
do it all right and get it, learn. Where if you were only growing lettuce and you knew you could consistently sell the lettuce, so that lettuce didn't work, you can spend a lot of time like digging into troubleshooting and figuring it out and solving the problem and that type of thing. At this stage, do you feel like there's problems, learn what you can, come up with a solution and move on? You can't quite maybe put as much time into figuring out as you want to, or do you have that time? How does it all feel as you're trying to balance this?
Oh, for sure. So let's just stick with the lettuce example. I didn't really start discovering this internal rot issue until I'm harvesting for the market on Friday, day before farmer's market. Not trying to get 30 bags, 40 bags of salad mix. Once we pull out all of the bad stuff, I don't even know if we're going to have that many. I don't think we'll be able to meet that sort of number. We're going to have a little bit less. We just have to do what we can do and then move on and hope that the next batch of lettuce is maybe it dries out a little bit. Maybe we just catch it a little earlier. But yeah, not really having a ton of time to troubleshoot. And let's dig into this a little deeper and see exactly what this is. Those would be good things to like remember. And then when I get to other farm, Nicholas, I'm having this issue with my little gem lettuce. And oh yeah, it's this. And yeah, that's the reason why I don't grow it outside. And so it's definitely just maybe I have a moment to think about it or to Google it or check in one of my books that I have. But for the most part, it's just like, all right, it is what it is. Let's move on. Let's hope the next one's a little bit better. There's not really a ton of time to dig deep into any particular issue.
Yeah, that's what I figured. It's, hey, we're moving forward here. Do the best you can and you troubleshoot it later on. That's the tough part about anything when you're growing it or you're stretched thin because you are growing it. Sometimes it's like getting it done and being 80% good is good enough, because trying to get it that extra 10% or 20% is going to require twice as much time, and you don't have that much time.
Yeah. Or another great example is carrots. What I'm thinking was just a couple of like wet spots in the bed, but I just had really bad rot. Like the ends of the carrots were just completely dissolving, pulling out. And it's like, all right, so maybe I need to get these out sooner and just let them sit in cooler. They can handle being in the cooler much longer than other things. And so I've essentially just been harvesting them as I need them, getting kind of 40-ish bunches every week. And we're finally coming to the end of those carrots, but realizing instead of it's different when you're harvesting them like over winter. I can just sit there indefinitely and just pick them as you need them. But now we're getting into spring. It's like, all right, so spring, probably summer carrots, like they need to come out much quicker and they would do much better just sitting in the cooler waiting for a market as opposed to sitting in the ground. Learn as you go and take a note and hope that you have that notebook and remember it when you get to that point next year, or just hope that it just stays in your brain.
Is it fair to say that when you learn to grow a crop, you really need to learn how to grow it 3 or 4 different ways? So growing carrots in March is very different than growing carrots in May, which is probably different than growing carrots in July. And it's just the base principles are the same. Like you're going to have fertility, you're going to plant it the same way, weed control is the same, but these little nuances, this time of year I have to do this, time of year I have to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like I said earlier, every week is like a new adventure. Every planting is different depending on the season. And we'll stick with carrots. In Crystal Organic, we pretty much only grow fall carrots. That's it. And so I know what to expect with this like long germination, and they can sit around for a while and not a ton of weed pressure. But if it is, it's fall winter weeds where they're not as aggressive, easy to get out, and bit chickweed, so on and so forth. And so this is like a whole new thing of late spring. Right now, carrot bed number 2, which is about to come online. But now we're seeing, all right, I guess I just need to get them out even quicker. If you're going to grow something potentially year round, you really need to learn how to grow it in all 4 seasons to really have a good grasp on it before you commit to doing that. I'm toying with the idea of doing summer carrots. I need to get more seed. I used pretty much most of what I had thinking I was just going to do spring carrots, but they're in such high demand and no one else is really doing them. Maybe we roll the dice and we try to do some kind of summer, early fall carrots and just look at semi year round production on some of these things. I know it's going to come with a learning curve. It's going to come with some crop loss. And every time you do something new in a time that you haven't done it, comes with a big learning curve.
I guess that's the other tricky part here, right? Is you get some feedback from the market. What is the market like? Oh, they love the carrots. They're doing well. They're popular. And then as seasons change, sorry, I can't supply them.
Yeah.
Try new things. What grows and match it up with that market demand. You said you had a big win on Asian greens. They're doing well for you. What are your thoughts there?
Once again, just ping ponging back and forth on I'm gonna do them, not gonna do them. And more, it just depends on the time of year. And I was super pumped early on. We're gonna really lean into this. And then I got into kind of late winter, early spring, and I just couldn't keep stuff from bolting. Everything just wanted to go to seed so quickly. And I don't know if it's just stubbornness, stupidity, ignorance, whatever it may be, but I just kept planting, hoping that we would catch a break. And we did with the pak choi and the tatsoi. I actually just cut out half of the bed, the second to last planting. And yeah, same thing. It goes up, boom, it goes to seed. It's no good. But then once we hit this patch of we're not really dropping below 50 degrees anymore, even at night. And the stuff seems to grow really well without really bolting. But yeah, we'll be harvesting pak choi this week it'll be in our farm baskets for the online store, and then it'll be at the farmer's market. And same thing with radishes, stuff that really wanted to bolt with any sort of cold. As soon as it had a chance to, it would. Now that we've gotten some consistent warm weather, it's growing. It still has some pest and stuff issues, but yeah, the Asian greens are doing really well in this sort of shoulder, late springtime. I want to keep growing stuff in every season just to see, because I hear someone say, oh yeah, that doesn't really grow well here this time of year. And I think I'm just young and naive enough to say, let me just try it. Everything's new. Everything's hard. So what's the difference? Just keep trying it. And maybe I realize that, like summer Asian greens do really well if you get them in and get them out really fast, sell them as like baby bok choy or just as a loose Mizuna mix or something.
Do you have certain crops that you feel at this time of year going into summer are like locked down? I know these are going to work. I can count on these. And then others that fall more into that experimental category?
Your basic stuff, tomatoes, zucchini, all of your sort of fruiting crops, I know those are going to do well. People are already asking for them. So those sort of things are definitely on. There's no doubt about it. But moving toward the other things that are a little, at least outside of my experience, whether it's some of the greens, things like kale or chard or collards that I know you can harvest them and they do perfectly fine in warm weather as long as you plant them late enough so they won't bolt. But trying to carry some of those things all the way through summer will be an interesting. It'll be hard. I think it's mostly going to come down to pest pressure and picking. I'm not concerned about them having really any problems of it just getting hammered with aphids or whatever. Or can I get out there early enough to pick them before it gets warm and they just melt? But I think those are the things that I'm going to try and carry through it's just the greens, the stuff that is like less abundant, less available in this area this time of year. Hope that I can catch that niche.
What'd you ever end up doing with the tunnel and putting in there?
It's got tomatoes in one half, and it's got a bed of arugula and a bed of hackeriza on the other half. And that'll probably be, I've got to make a decision. I think just for like disease issues, I think it's going to be cucumbers because I love the heat. They'll do so great. But just thinking about powdery mildew, other sort of disease issues that cucumbers are just so notorious for. And because the variety that I'm growing, I was going to not do cucumbers and I just had some seed and decided, let's just do it because it'll sell well at market. Everybody loves good cucumber. So it's like market more. It's just a basic, like open pollinated heirloom variety. And so it really needs all the help that it can get to not get any sort of disease pressure. And trying to grow cucumbers outside late spring, early summer when it's wet and hot, that's just going to be a disaster. So we may interplant the cucumbers like I did with the tomatoes, into the radishes, which work really well. So I may harvest out the middle of the the turnips and the arugula and put the cucumbers in there. So I think that's going to be the plan for summer.
How do you feel about thinking ahead? Here's what's in the ground. Here's where my skill is at. Potential unforeseen challenges with pests and heat, and then knowing market demand. Do you feel like you're on a good track to have consistent product to bring to the market week in and week out?
Think so. And I think the only reason I say that is because I'm just trusting that I will, and I keep delivering more or less every week for the last 3 or 4 weeks. I keep going, oh my God, I'm not going to have enough next week. Like I look at what I'm harvesting and it's, oh my God, this is going to be done. And I just, next week might be a really slim harvest. And either I harvest more than I realized I did because it's getting warmer and stuff's growing a little faster, or it's, oh, this other crop came online earlier than I anticipated. And so at this point, just out of just trust and faith and knowing that I'm doing my best to try to keep things coming, then it's, I think we'll more or less keep getting to a point. I think we'll be late on a lot of stuff if I'm going based off of what some of the other farms around me are doing. I don't have peppers in the ground yet. I don't have cucumbers in the ground yet. Just gone zucchini and squash in the ground. So I'll probably be several weeks to a month behind most everybody. But considering I won't really have much competition, I don't think that's going to be a problem. Market.
What's the biggest realization at this point in the season on the growing side of things as a farmer, like that you just didn't expect? Whoa, okay, this is different than I thought, or wow, okay, I really see why when so-and-so talked about this, that really rings true.
I think doing a couple inches of compost, I really thought it would give me a lot more grace on the weed pressure than it has. Man, some of these like annual grasses and different things are just hammered. I tried to weed a bed today of kale, and it was just, the grasses were so thick. They just come up so quick and so aggressively that it was like the only real effective way to do it without hammering plants was just to crawl it. And so, oh no, like I need to really stay on top of getting them when they're like the thread sink, when they're really little, just to make sure that if I don't get ahead of it, it's going to get ahead of me. And then I'm wasting time. I probably could have weeded 3 beds in the time that it took me to crawl 1, just because such heavy pressure. Yeah. Just, some of these like crabgrasses that just grow out, they're so dense. They put out such a thick root system. And it was like, this wasn't here 2 weeks ago. What the heck happened? Yeah, definitely I need to devote more time to cultivation than I have been.
Would you go the landscape fabric route?
Probably. I've gone back and forth. Do I want to invest in that and do a bunch of plastic? And I think I was hoping that the couple inches of compost would be enough to mulch everything and keep it going. And now that I'm realizing like some of these weeds, like the coffee weed, some of the volunteer stuff that it's just like in the seed bank from last year, it's just so aggressive. I applied 2 inches of compost on a new bed 2 weeks ago, and I've already got grass poking up through it. And so, I think I might need to set some additional money aside, and at least with some of the longer season stuff, tomatoes or peppers, eggplants. I might need to look at getting some of the pre-made whole landscape fabric, and just to give me the peace of mind of knowing it's one less thing that I have to deal with.
Yeah, that's doing a lot of our research. That's where we see the big win in it. I get people don't love it. It's plastic. It doesn't look the best, but at some point, it's like anything. It's a trade-off of time versus some other metric, right? Or value that you're putting up there. What's been the compost win? Have you had it? Do you notice those beds? Are they holding extra moisture? Do they seem to have better growth? They're not really helping on weed pressure. Have you noticed that the effort? I don't want to frame this in a way to be like, hey, never add compost, because obviously adding organic matter, adding those nutrients is beneficial. But what are the advantages you're seeing this season with weed pressure or weed suppression, I should say, is not one of them? Is there anything that you're really noticing from those beds?
Yeah. So let me clarify. It's definitely suppressing weeds. It's just not suppressing all of it. It might be knocking it back 30%.
So slowing it or cutting it.
Yeah. Yeah. And part of that is I think it might just be my property issue, because the previous guy, I did nothing to cultivate. It was just like, we'll just harvest through the weeds, and then we just bush hog everything down and turn it in and then do it all over again. And so I inherited one hell of a seed bank. And it's like, funny enough, one of my biggest weeds that I'm dealing with right now is okra from last year that this guy grew. Funny enough. But yeah, I would say the two biggest things has been like tilth, or a lack of compaction, just soil structure, and moisture. I think I only have one bed. I have two beds left that I'm currently growing in that are uncomposted, and just flipped over a couple more of them this week that got compost for the first time. Yeah. And even like going through and broad forking some of the bed flips I've done that already had compost, significantly easier, so much better. It stays nice and moist. And these uncomposted beds, just because we have such heavy clay, they just turn to concrete, or they turn into just a mud pit. There's like kind of no in between. And then just like even ease of weed, because it's just the compost stays fluffy. It's relatively easy to get weeds out because it's so loose. Those weeds, just the root structure just slips right out. Yeah, just holding on to moisture, keeping beds nice and good, and then that sort of soil structure itself. It's definitely been the big win. I don't really know how much the compost is helping as far as help or like organic matter. It just depends. Some stuff like really shallow rooted and it's mostly staying in the compost. That stuff seems to grow insanely well. And then some of the stuff that's a little bit deeper rooted doesn't really seem to be helping much.
If you think ahead, are there things, all right, this is what I'm dealing with in May. I can't deal with it now, but come November, December, October next year at the end of the season, like these are things I definitely need to do regarding my beds to fix weed pressure, increase tilth, make my life easier this time of year. I don't want to bring in, let's not talk infrastructure and stuff, but are there things around the beds that come to mind that you're like, hey, if I could pause time here and do a whole bunch of stuff, my life would be a lot easier? Is there anything that comes to mind for that?
I would think just amending them better. I had okay numbers coming into the season, like when I first started, without any sort of fertility added, just that a little bit of like jet fuel that was still in there from previous seasons, from the non-organic stuff from the guy before. But I just did a really in-depth soil test through Logan Labs. All the little trace minerals and stuff that I can't really pronounce, like molybdenum stuff. I don't even really know what it does. And realizing it's like, oh man, like I'm basically like deficient in almost everything except for potassium. And really, I would love to be able to have the extra money to just buy all of the different amendments, get the extra calcium and magnesium and phosphorus and nitrogen and all the other various things, if I remember off some. And of course, try to get those in like a good organic form that can be bioavailable really quickly and so on and so forth. I would love to to devote the finances and the time to really get the beds up in tip top shape. It feels like I'm playing hurt a little bit. I have subpar fertility, but frankly, I don't really have the time or the finances to get everything perfect, and we just have to roll with what we're getting. I keep harvesting and stuff keeps looking good for the most part. And so we're just going to ride it out until we can address it later. Because what little fertility I have seems to be getting us through.
Yeah. I mean, why I asked is because we've dealt with the same thing. We switched our web store over to Shopify. And at first it was like, hey, just get it up and running because we need to sell. And then it's like, all right, there's this laundry list of things that we want to change and tweak and upgrade and fix. But you only have so much bandwidth. You only have so much money. And it's just, okay, we'll chip away. So like in a perfect world, it's, yeah, we wish we had all these things done, but it's like, all right, get this rolling. Then, okay, next, what's the most important thing, or what's the thing we have the time to get done, and just slowly go at that list. And yeah, imagine you're seeing things there. Remind me if you had, of your total beds that you could have on the farm, how many are prepped or implantable today?
About a third.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you had that other 2/3, would that be a bonus or would that be a hindrance? Do you need them at this point?
Honestly, at this point, might be a hindrance. I've really felt, oh my gosh, I wish I had more space. I wish I could get more plants in the ground. But I think I would be running into an issue of I've got to find more outlets. I need to be spending more time because I'm at a point right now where I'm even with 2 full days a week devoted to being on the farm. So I have Tuesdays and Fridays, I am on the farm all day. And then Saturdays, I'm at the farmer's market all day. And I still find myself spending the majority of my time harvesting, which means I'm taking time away from building out more beds, weeding beds, getting new plants started, amending beds, focusing on infrastructure, so on and so forth. And so if I had even more beds that were in production, like I would be swimming in produce that I don't know if I would really have the time or the energy to have an outlet for at the moment. So I decided to just hold back and get block A like on lock and done, and then expand a little bit into block B because the beds are already done. Like they just need compost and they need to get planted. And yeah, because I'm having a hard time finding time to do anything other than harvesting as it is. And yeah, if block A and B were completely done and in production, I'd be drowning right now.
Yeah. Are you at least able to keep them weed free, the tarped or whatever, and kill that process off?
Yeah, I've got those 4 beds that are like ready to get composted. They've been tarped for a couple of months, and I'm about to move the tarp over to the next section that just got. I wasn't happy about it, but you do what you got to do. Just bush hog it and then disked it so that it's just like bare ground again. And I'm just going to tarp it until I can get to it another time. And yeah, I at least did that. That was a smart move instead of just letting it go nuts. Cause I have 2 beds that I formed and shaped, and it's like, oh, we're going to get everything going. And then it just got away from me. And now, yeah, they probably they need to get broad forked. Did essentially almost starting from square one, other than the fact that like, there is a bed there.
Yeah. The bed thing is really interesting. And I think there's probably some lessons there. Cause if you go back to when you started this and you thought ahead to when you're selling, would you have thought that you could have been rolling at the speed you needed to be moving with just 1/3 of the beds built out?
Oh, absolutely not. I think I'm starting to realize how these guys are doing what they do on the amount of space because it's, oh wow, like you can, and I'm working with like subpar fertility, par soil in general. They haven't even been really growing in like the warm season of the year. And man, I'm able to like consistently deliver $700-ish a week at the farmer's market. And I'm on 1/3 of an acre right now. And so it's, man, it's like we can actually, I can see how once we really get dialed in and we start expanding, like we can actually make something really happen here with the space we have. I thought for sure I would need at least double the space that I need to be delivering what I'm delivering right now.
Yeah. One thing I have learned is just that from talking to so many farmers. Like I met Eric Schultz for dinner, and I can't remember what their land base is now, around an acre, maybe an acre and a half, but like their production has just gone up year after year. They're not adding beds. It's just they get more dialed in on their crop timing. The fertility gets more locked in. Everything just becomes more efficient. So it's like this idea of I need to earn more, so I need to add more land, I think is a big myth
For sure.
in small scale farming. Yes, at some point when you are, but I think it's like you need to be at a level, whatever, 10 out of 10, like Jedi, right?
Yeah.
Or you add land, because there's probably many other steps in there that you could do to get more out of the land before you tack on more. It's, am I maximizing everybody I already do have? Is like everybody I have already in production 100% of the time? Are all my crops of equal value? Can I substitute out those things? So there's so many of these little things. If you looked ahead and we jump now into October, it's the end of the season, those other 2/3 of the beds, would you build out all of them? So now you have essentially 3/3 of a farm filled out. Would you just say, maybe I'll add another third? What would you do at this point, seeing where you're at now? And I know this can change over the next few months.
Yeah. Just looking at the workload on 1/3 of an acre that I feel like I'm like grounding in with working myself working part-time with help 1 day a week. And if I can't keep up with it, it's, what if I had a full acre ready to go? I Yeah, I'm trying to think of the metric that I've heard from several people, three full-time people per acre. And I'm not ready to expand to that yet. I don't have enough sales outlets or time to really devote to that. I think maybe we'll hit 2/3 by the end of the season. And that's with some of it being in like long season crops, sweet corn, some winter squash, things like that that can just sit. And as long as whether they get landscape fabric, which would be ideal, or just heavy mulch or something, maybe we'll be at 2/3 of an acre by the end. But we're definitely not going to be at 2/3 with all high rotation, high profitable crops. That's just, it makes me want to break out in hives just thinking about the amount of time commitment that it would take in year one. So it's definitely, I think I've learned my lesson that it's like good to dial in, start small, and not feel I have to fill all of the space. That comes up with other challenges. All right. So then how do you manage the other half an acre? We'll say, do I get the bed shaped and do it in cover crop and just cover crop a few times? Or do I just let it go fallow? Do I ARP the whole thing? And it's like all those things come with different financial requirements and time requirements and stuff. I'm thinking more about that than I am now, like getting those beds in production.
Yeah, because there's two constraints here, right? One is you could have the labor, but then you'd have to sell all the product. And I know a
Yeah.
farm right now that has that problem. It's, hey, we produce all this stuff. Where do we sell it? So just growing it is half the battle. You got to do something with it. And the other thing is, if you could sell it, you need the labor. So you have this double-edged sword for you. You're labor constrained, and right now you're market constrained. So having more stuff just creates the stress of now I got to sell it and find the labor to harvest it and deal with all the beds. So it doesn't help you for where it's at. And if you're saying right now you're spending most of your time harvesting anyway, just adding more tasks that are non-harvesting is just going to strain the system that much more, right?
Yeah. And some of that time is just because it's not efficient yet. I go back to earlier conversations about like wash pack efficiency and so on and so forth. And so some of it is just like a lack of efficiency, but yeah, some stuff you can be taught or be trained on from other places or courses, but some of it's just like, you got to find what fits your spot. And so it's maybe I can get more efficient at harvesting. If I had a quick cut screen harvester, yeah, like I could harvest arugula 10 times faster than I am, but frankly, I don't have the extra $700 and something to buy it right now, or maybe so on and so forth. Yeah, I think scaling at the rate that I wanted to would be a detriment to the business at the moment. And yeah, and trying to sell everything because you could just be like, oh, all you got to do is just find a couple wholesale accounts and you just offload all that sort of stuff. But everything's so new, everything's so nuanced, and there's ups and downs. And it's maybe you end up with a couple 100 pounds of radish, or maybe you end up with 50 pounds of radish. And it's banking on wholesale accounts that need it week in and week out with these certain amounts. I really commend farms that go the like restaurant route right out of the gate, because man, that's a lot of commitment to having regular orders consistently when you have no idea what the heck you're doing. Because right now I showed up with 10 bunches of broccolini just because for whatever reason, it just hasn't quite gone off the way I did. And those 10 customers were super happy. And then the other, however many people were just like, oh yeah, I just sold that. Oh, that's fine. It's not like I have to look a chef in the eyes and be like, sorry, man, I know I promised you this and you were trying to plan your menu around that, but you can't. Yeah. I think especially early on, having small levels of production that you can sell in a market or retail in a way to where people aren't depending on you so that you can get good at it and then start to scale in future years as you dial in your process and know like, all right, I can bank on this many pounds out of this bed. That seems a far more sustainable and successful route to go.
I think you got to know where do you want to be as a business? So I interviewed recently Jill Duncan. She's a farmer in St. Louis. That interview will probably be out before this one. I don't remember the exact acreage. She's on a pretty small acreage. So like quarter-ish of an acre. I don't remember. I think she has one person that comes in to help her harvest. Basically does everything herself though. She doesn't want to get employees, doesn't want to expand. She can make what she needs for her living situation on that much land, and it just works. When you look at where you're at, third of an acre. Let's say the income stayed here for now, like it didn't dip down. Let's assume with efficiency, you can increase production on this one, or I said a third of an acre. I'll say one third of your farm. This one.
It's probably about a third of an acre, maybe. Yeah. Somewhere probably between, a quarter and a third, realistically.
So if you can get more efficient on this and manage this with you and an employee and boost up revenue, then the next thing is if you tripled this and went to the full acre, you probably have to bring in staff. Do you want to go in that direction, grow the business that much? Like, where do you personally want to be? Where's the sweet spot for you at this point in life? And because some people don't want to be managers. Some people don't want a ton of staff. They don't want 3 or 4 employees.
Yeah, I think ultimately I want to be there. I had a conversation with my wife before this on, do we just double down on the farm and you just come and help me? And this becomes like our sole thing. And so that's essentially 2 people's income that has to be covered. And so I think ultimately, I would love to be able to cultivate the full space that I have, because I have it. I'm paying for it. It's there. Let's use it. Let's maximize it. But I think where previously it was like, let's get it in production as soon as possible and try to crank out as much as we can. Oh no, like we need to really have a plan for scaling here. We need to really think about, is this a year 1 thing? Doesn't look like it. It's probably at least a year 2, if not maybe moving forward. Yeah, because it's like, I'm still in the learning stages of learning how to grow and learning how to sell. And then you're going to throw in learning how to manage and learning how to have to handle payroll and handle like schedules and all that sort of stuff. You're going from becoming a glorified gardener who sells their stuff to, like running a full-fledged business. And it's, if and when we get to that point, it's not going to be anytime soon.
Because even if next year you triple your production space, do you think you're experientially, if that's a word, ready to manage a full acre?
Probably not. Just seeing how much of a workload and like mental capacity it takes to manage a third of it. Some of the stuff, it's once you know how to handle it with this little bit, it's not like it's going to take 3 times more work, or it's going to take 3 times more mental capacity, or 3 times more crop planning. It's not exactly like that. But I don't know if I'm really ready, like you said, experientially to handle that much. Just even in a timing standpoint of knowing like, all right, we have to do this many beds every single week. Cause even now, like with successions, I probably should have done that 2 weeks before than I did now, but let's go ahead and do it now. And it seems to keep working itself out, but I'm not on any sort of like succession schedule because like we started this, it's a new season. It's a new every month. And so it's like arugula's coming on faster or slower, depending on this, that, whatever. I don't think I'm at an experience level where I can really handle like full scale production at this point.
Yeah. I think a lesson for newer people is like less, start with less. And maybe this is a human thing, probably just a guy thing of, just start with more, man, like farm the whole damn acre.
Well, I think too, there's this like preconceived notion of what a farm looks like.
Right.
There's farms around me that are growing corn, or there's not a whole lot of veg growers around here, but it's, we went to an Easter thing like last month or whatever. And I'm a new farmer in town or whatever. Oh yeah. How many acres you got? I'm like 1, and I'm only cultivating a third of it. They're like, and you can see the like gears start to turn, and they're like, a 404 error does not compute. Like they do not understand what I'm doing. And so there's this element of, if I want to be taken seriously as a farmer, like you need to be farming acreage. And it's, no, this is a new thing that's way different than anybody else around here. And at the end of the day, it's like, what's the goal? To crank out as much production as possible? Or if I make enough to pay my bills and to make an honest living, should that not be good enough? And is that not like peak, as opposed to, just trying to grow as much food on as much property as you possibly can. Right? And so
start with option 1, right? Start with making a living.
Yeah, exactly. Because in a way, there's a potential. I don't know for sure. You don't know everybody's saying, but it's like, once they're done paying on whatever they're paying on that big fancy green tractor with GPS and like taxes and labor and whatever, we may end up being relatively close when it comes to the amount of profit at the end of the year. And
Yeah. Oh, yeah. A row crop farmer might make, these numbers might not be totally up to date, but like $500 an acre,
yeah,
like over a season
yeah,
with all the costs and all that stuff. You need a lot of acreage. And it's just, I know at this point, this is not even an assumption, like less than half an acre, you can make a living on that. That living means, around, I'd say 75 to plus 100K a year gross. Most of that's going to be profit though, because I've seen enough people do it. And there's I guarantee there's people listening be like, no way, I have that much and I can't do it. And that's really a sales problem. The growing part isn't a problem. Like you can grow enough crop on less than half an acre to make that much money.
yeah,
It's just, you got to get the market there to sell it. And if you look at yours, if you're $700 a week, you did that 52 weeks a year, and that's 45 grand for year one. You can bump that up year two by say 50%. That gets you something up to 60,000. Like then it starts to get up there.
yeah.
Where it really works is you optimize and that type of thing. So does a third of an acre for you, like does it feel, is that the sweet spot now? Do you feel like for you at this stage, or are you still worried, hey, not enough room, might run out? I don't think you feel like it's too much. Does it feel like, hey, that's the comfortable zone right now?
Just because I haven't got the like long season stuff that for whatever reason, I just love to do, winter squash, especially. I think probably somewhere around half an acre, because I just do the run and gun, super high profitability. I want to grow like we say, like real food for real people. And so trying to have a more well-rounded amount of stuff for people. I think maybe that half an acre, if I can get everything dialed in and like really know what I'm doing, that would probably be like the sweet spot. And so there is this psychological thing though, of if you look at my farm, it's fenced in and there's barn, flower beds and seed house in one corner, like covering two sides. And then you have like fruit trees on the other two sides. And so it creates this like perfect center area where everything is. And for only like half of it to be in production, the other half to just be sitting there, it feels like there's this like missing piece that needs to be like psychologically, you feel like it needs to be like roads in production from edge to edge. And I think if that's not what we need to do to make money, then maybe I'll get over that one day. Just even like the weird psychological games that are played in my brain because of the layout of the property may win out at the end. But yeah, I think that kind of half an acre, which is probably where we'll probably top out at the end of this year, will probably, yeah, if we can really get things dialed in, that might be enough for next year too.
One of the other struggles I saw you're having here in the notes, bed flips without having a walk behind tractor, challenging. What's that look like these days?
A couple of things, but it depends on the crop. One part is a really heavy, like leafy crop, like arugula. Man, a flail mower would solve so many problems. If I'm doing come again, so I can try to get a couple of harvests out of it, which seems to be working. And then I have all these plants because I'm doing like 4 to 5 rows on a 30-inch bed. That's a lot of vegetative growth that's there. It's a lot of roots in the ground, a lot of stems. And I don't really have a solid way of dealing with that because of the size of the bed and the shape of it. Like it's too tall, a little too wide to just run a push mower over, but it's too small to run a riding lawnmower over. But yeah, like having a flail mower, that would be that perfect sort of 30-inch diameter that I could just go and take it right down to the ground, or I could just flail mow it and tarp it, be done with it, would be amazing. Or take a power harrow to stir everything in, get that nice even seed bed. Even a tiller, even if I decided to like, man, these 2 beds right here are like really rough. There's lots of weed pressure. I know I'm trying to do no-till. That promise is only being made to myself. And so maybe we just need to like retail these 2 beds and just start, like, cause I have a couple right now. I'm like, I might just retail these and just start from scratch. And so being able to have something that's made for the size that I'm working with would be a huge game changer because you can only do so much with a stirrup hoe, a bed rake, and a broad fork. and it can take hours sometimes to get a bed prepped and ready to go. If I have a lot of weed pressure or a lot of vegetative growth or a lot of compaction or whatever, those things would definitely save me a lot of time and get me to that point of we talk about being dialed in and getting things in production all the time.
Especially with limited labor, right? It's one of those cases where tools make all the difference. You will go down to bed with a walk behind tractor in whatever 2 minutes versus
Yeah,
you got to stir up that thing for however long it takes. And that's that many more things you can just get done. So yeah, I get the challenges, but I think this sheds a lot of light and first year challenges with tools, adapting to seasons, right? Learning how to grow, managing the amount of beds you have. There's a lot of these lessons. So we'll continue to touch on these throughout the season and see where this all goes.
for sure.